Hey friends, I'm Rob, and thanks for coming to my channel. Okay, so CAGED is for boomers. I'm just gonna say it right there. The CAGED method is antiquated and flawed, really. So what is the CAGED method? According to the internet, the CAGED method was developed by a guy named Keith Allen, and Guitar Player magazine first highlighted this method in 1975. It basically takes the chord shapes, you know, those root position cowboy chords, and outlines them across the fretboard, linking them together to create a system of common notes. As guitarists, we can take these shapes and start to piece them together and get a feel of where we're at on the fretboard. In terms of music theory, this visualization method helps guitarists to learn their triads and inversions, which gives us options to play the same chords in different ways. I mean, it's brilliant, really. I'm not trying to poo-poo on Keith's work by any means. I just think that I have a different way of viewing it, through a word that's not actually a word like CAGED is. I'm talking about GECA. G-E-C-A. Let's see what this system allows us to do. I'm just going to play some simple D to A chord movements in 3 different positions using triads in their inversions. So here we go. Okay, so I'll be honest, that was a little boring. Also, I had never really heard of the CAGED system until multiple years after I had already learned my triads, so I don't really use it inside of my head, but I do think it is a great method for putting the triad system on a guitar. GECA, on the other hand, is a little more logical to me, and here's why. If you use my method, you should have already memorized the notes on the bottom 2 strings here. What GECA does is it outlines these chords both behind and in front of the root on the lower 2 strings. Okay, so just follow me for a moment here, if you can. All right, so the G and E shapes are the shapes that are gonna be based off of the 6th string root. C and A are gonna be your shapes based off of your 5th string root. So G is behind the root, E is in front of the root on the low 6th string, and then moving on to the 5th string, your C shape is behind the root, and your A shape is in front of the root. Okay, so the other shapes I used in that little chord progression there are based off the 4th string root, okay? And I just omitted that completely for right now. So behind the 4th string root, you have the E shape, and in front of the 4th string root, you have the D shape. Also, I threw in some suspended chords just for a little extra color to not make it so boring, even though it was incredibly boring. This method makes you focus on the roots on the bottom 2 strings, along with throwing in the 3rds and the 5ths of the chords. We'll get into that in another video. If you use my octaves method combined with my 5-fret visualization method that I spoke about in a previous video, you'll be able to find your way around the fretboard no problem. Not only do you rely on the shapes which naturally emerge, just like using the CAGED method, but you will also know where your roots are at all times and how these shapes are surrounding the roots. So my method helps you out with that. I omitted the D shape in the CAGED method because it's actually part of the C shape, and I think it has a tendency to confuse people. The other shapes are all there though. The GECA name may not quite have the ring to it that CAGED does, but I do think it is more effective. All right, so let's take a closer look at this with the old electric git fiddle. All right, so I'm just gonna start off by playing all the chord shapes down in the root position. Your old cowboy chords, G, E, C, and A, just in case you don't already know what they look like. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take those shapes and we're gonna build them around the roots on the low E string and A string. The G shape is going to be behind the root. So here's G, behind is gonna be back here. And the E shape is going to be in front of the root. Front of the root is going to be up this way. Okay, on the low On the A string, the C shape is going to be behind the root, back over here. And your A shape is going to be in front of the root. Now, some of these chords, if you were to play all 6 strings at the same time, not really the easiest to play or really the most effective. So really, we'll get into this in another video, but all it takes is really 3 notes to play a chord. So I might just do a minimal version of some of these chords, but the shapes are all there. The notes are all there. All right, so let's go ahead and get into that. We're going to start in the key of G, and we're going to play these shapes around the roots, so that way you know where they're at. Okay, so naturally, first shape is going to be G. There's your low G, your low E string root, which is on the 3rd fret. There's G. We're just going to play a G chord. Pretty easy. All right, so that is behind the root. Okay, in front of the root, we're going to be playing an E shape. All right? This is basically a G bar chord that's based off the low E string root. Okay, so we have those 2 chords. Hear how similar they sound to one another? Because it's the same chord. You know, they just have different types of timbre to them. Okay, so let's move up to the 5th string root. So your G is going to be up the 10th fret. It's an octave up here. And then we're going to be playing a C chord shape behind the root. And we're going to be playing an A chord shape in front of the root. So that's what it looks like. Not the easiest chord to play, but as long as you get 3 consecutive notes in this pattern, you're going to be playing the G chord. You play it up here like that, like I was playing it a little bit ago. So, and then our root is right down here. So in front of that, we have the A chord. All right. All right, so playing 3 consecutive strings, like I mentioned, will create a triad by using all these shapes. So remember, you don't have to play all the strings when you play the chords. It only takes 3 distinct and specific notes to make the chord make sense to the ear of the listener. The triads are the foundation of all chords. In the future, we'll talk more about this, but now we're just gonna try to keep it simple. All of these shapes will be able to spell out all of the chords that you really need all across the entire fretboard. Now, we also know where all our notes are at because of our 2x2 octaves trick that we learned earlier, so we can really start to put all this together and start to really make sense of things. All right, GECA, everybody. Kind of a goofy name, but a more logical approach to the CAGED system. So this about wraps it up for this video. Please like and subscribe if you think that this content is helpful for you, and stay tuned for some more videos. In the next video, we're going to be talking about what I think is the most important thing in learning music. You definitely don't want to miss that one. So hang around. We're just going to continue to build this thing from the ground up and learn some of the ideas that might just help you to unlock some things on guitar. I'll see you next time, friends.